This is my Swinging Old Lady quilt, and it's a little hard to see in the video, but after such extensive quilting and the fact that it was hand pieced, it does not lay exactly flat. You can see in the green, the big green rosette, it's kind of bubbly. Also in that lime green one, and then over in the corners. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it through a gentle wash cycle in my washer with tons of color catchers, because I did not pre-wash my fabric. I never pre-wash because I usually don't need to ever get the quilt wet, but in this case I do. So I will be taking the quilt and putting it in the washing machine on cold because it's wool batting, and a gentle cycle also because it's wool batting. This quilt is not bound yet. I will bind it after I block it. But anyways, I will stick a handful of color catchers in it, and then I will be back once that is done so that we can block the quilt. Here are the color catchers from Swinging Old Lady. There's a little bit of red on this. There's a little bit of like black, but not too bad. So hopefully the quilt's okay. I'm gonna pull it out in just a minute. It's in the washer. Okay, here we are starting out the first edge. I'm using a perpendicular laser level that I bought on Amazon for about $13, and I'm just pinning every inch or so on the edge of the quilt, and I'm angling my pins towards the outside of the quilt so that they hold better. I'm just smoothing as needed. I'm just adding those pins about every inch or so. So I've got this video sped up about 10 times. So this was quite a lengthy process, as you'll see, 10 times longer than this video. So I think it took me about an hour, hour and a half to do this process. But got this first edge pinned and smoothed, and then now I'm using my ruler to kind of check the square and going on to the next edge, just pinning every inch or so. And again, angling those pins out and smoothing as needed. Now my laser doesn't show as well as I'd like on this rug, just because it's not where I can set the laser completely flat. It'd be better on a carpet, I'm sure, especially a non-patterned carpet, because this rug is very patterned, but made do with what I had to do. Just use the straight edge, and then I'd move my laser down, as you'll see, using the straight edge to kind of hold that, and then I had to put my cell phone case underneath the laser to hold it level too. But I just kept going and kept going. When I get to the end of this side, I'm going to turn the entire rug around so that I'm not working next to the wall, pinning the last couple of sides, and just keep pinning and smoothing. Takes a lot of pins. Luckily I have a lot of pins, but it's well worth the effort put in. Rough on the knees, rough on the glutes, but well worth it. You'll see in the end what this process does to the quilt. And now this is the second quilt that I've done this with. La Passacaglia was the first one, and they both were because I wanted to put them in shows, but you can do this to any quilt that you'd like to lay nice and flat. I like to hang mine on the wall, so even without shows, I'd want this to lay nice and flat. So just keep going, keep smoothing, and lots of pins. Just put on an audiobook, that's what I did, or your favorite music, and just keep working. Just keep pinning, keep moving the laser down if you need to. I liked working from this direction better because I could see the laser against my fingers better. So it's better than left to right. Right to left was definitely better for me. But just keep smoothing. You can see how wonky the quilt is getting on that last edge and by my hands. That shows how much this process needed to happen. I mean, it doesn't mean that the quilt was bad the quilting or the piecing. It's just something that happens with fibers. So just need to get them nice and smooth. Now this one I was starting from the edge, going to the first edge that I did, but that was needing more stretch than that. I found that it was a little wonky, and I knew I was going to have to undo some of that first edge. So I'm going to switch to the other corner and start there where the most of the stretch needs to happen. You'll see, look at that laser, it needs to stretch quite a bit. So here I'm having to use more than one pin because it kept just flopping back to not straight. So I'm going to pin actually into the border and into the next border, so about 3 pins in a lot of places, so that I can get that fabric to stay where I want it to stay. So a lot more pins here. Just so I can find all my pins when I'm undoing it, I am putting them in the dots of color, and then I'm putting them in the white in between the black stripes on the striped border, just so I can see those pin heads. I actually did find, as I was folding up the quilt after the video, I found a couple that I missed, but hope I got them all. Anyways, this, as I get to the last edge, you'll see I need to turn the quilt again and redo that edge, that last edge, the one I started with, because I didn't know how much stretch I needed to give to this quilt when I was on that first edge. So I'd have to redo almost a third to a half of it. I'm not quite sure how much of that had to be redone, but definitely needed to get it on square. Luckily, the last half was where I needed it to be, so didn't have to redo the whole thing. And then here again, it's needing stretched quite a bit, so I'm using pins into the borders as well. My laser kept moving, so I kept having to fiddle with that, but finally I'll get it. And then you'll see in a minute that I'll go put some pins in the very center of the quilt. That's because the very center circle was not laying as flat as I'd like, and I was hoping to get it to lay a little flatter with some pins there as well, and that seemed to work quite well, as I'll show you in the very end of this video. Anyways, I hope this video was helpful to you in learning how to block a quilt, and I hope you like and subscribe to our channel. Okay, it's 2 days later and the quilt is dry and it is now laying flat. I know it's hard to see in the photos, but these sections here didn't lay very flat, and then this corner over here didn't lay very flat, and now they do. And then those pins that I put in the very middle, those were because that center kind of came up a little bit, and it still does a little bit just because of the quilting and my piecing, but now it's a little flatter because of the pins that I put in it while it was wet. But overall, this quilt is now flat and square.